I'd like to call to order the Monday, April 29th meeting of the Norton Conservation Commission. First hearing is a notice of intent for file 250-1040, Michael Trowbridge of Hutchins Trowbridge Associates, 306 and 308 East Main Street. Proposed project is to construct an addition to a warehouse, detention basin, and grading within 100 feet of DVW.
All right. This is legal notice, wetlands hearing Norton for Redwood Norton LLC, DBA Burns and Bills at 306 to 308 East Main Street, map 5, parcel 38 and 52. In accordance with the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended. The Norton Conservation Commission will hold a notice of intent hearing for Michael Trowbridge of 200 Johnson Street, Massport, Mass. for a project at Burning and Phil's at 306-308 East Main Street, Norton. The proposed project is in addition to warehouse, detention basin, and grading within 100 foot of bordering vegetated wetlands. And one other item to detail is, has the legal notice bill
Yes.
today?
Yep, that's Kate.
For the record, Michael Trowbridge, Hutchins Trowbridge Associates, I represent Burning and Phil's. This area is the existing building. They have the parking and the loading docks in the back. And currently, there's a retention basin located behind, which takes in just the roof drains. We're proposing no new parking whatsoever. We already have more than enough parking for this project. We're simply adding a 49,000, I think it's 400 square foot addition to the rear of the property, lining up with the sideline. And we have a detention basin in the back, which is just for roof water runoff. This particular plan, we flagged this section in here. There are other wetlands that are off the site that were part of original notice of intent from years ago. This was flagged by Scott Goddard. I believe we did put the report within our submittal. There was a couple of things that had been requested while we were working on the site plan with the planning board during some of the department head hearings, which was placing a fence along the actual property line. So there's a chain link fence around the property line with a gate, and a key would be provided to the town. There was also a request for post and rail fencing, which has been shown all along the 25-foot no disturb zone as well. So we do have erosion control, silt sock, which we provided all the way along between any work that's being done and the ordering vegetative wetlands. This is going to go for peer review. We did submit the check today. So this is just kind of an overview. I know there'll be more details to kind of flush out once the peer review is done.
Yeah, so I still have to do the wetland inspection. Just a quick question, Mike. The stormwater basin is a retention pond. Is there any thought to doing infiltration basin instead, since we're right on the aquifer?
We don't really have much area to work with. So that's probably about the limit of what we have to hold that in.
Are you saying an infiltration basin would have to be bigger?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Infiltration basin what?
Would have to be bigger?
Pure retention versus detention.
Right. Okay,
And
well,
we're-
not retention or detention, infiltration basin.
Oh, subsurface, you mean?
Totally different set of requirements under stormwater management.
You're talking about subsurface, like galleys or if it's something like that?
Whatever
Never
you
achieved
use.
infiltration.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I would have to guess that that would require a bigger area than what we're showing now. We can certainly take a look at that, though.
And if I could just ask a question, so you have, oh, that's the zone line. Where is the property line? You go right up to the property line? Is that what happened?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
That's the entire property line. And we are proposing a fence along there, 6-foot high chain link.
So that at this point, there's no way you could pull that back, the basin back from the, because you're right at the no disturb line, it looks like.
No, we really can't, because we do have to have it, you know, an access road around the building and kind of limits us. This has been approved by the planning board under site plan approval. Amber has received a special permit, and they realize that we'll be coming before conservation.
Is there anything else?
Not until after the peer review and my site inspection.
Anyone else have any questions on the board? Comments? No? Any questions or comments?
I have a couple of questions.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is this a flood zone at all?
I'm sorry, can you
A
repeat
flood
that?
zone?
We're not in flood zone.
Flood zone. So you mentioned that you don't have an existing conditions plan here. So in the set, did you mention that there were loading bays now where the addition's going?
No.
Okay.
There's loading bays, loading docks right in here on the existing building.
Okay.
None in the area where we're
So
doing.
this is just gonna be for interior use?
Correct,
Okay,
yeah. No loading dock doors on them whatsoever.
okay.
Is there anything else to say, or is everybody? Anyone else, any questions, comments? In that case, we did a peer review and inspection.
Correct.
Is there a recommended continuation?
Our next
timeframe?
meeting is 5:20.
That work for you?
I just don't think that's gonna be enough time for the
Oh,
peer
okay.
review and then for us to flush out any,
Okay.
I was thinking at least a month.
Meeting after that is 6:10.
Yeah.
Is that?
Okay.
So,
I move that the hearing for notice of intent 250-1040 be continued until 6/10/19.
Second.
Julie makes a motion to continue the public hearing for file 250-1040 to the June 10th meeting, seconded by Lisa. All those in favor?
Thank you very much. Have a good night. You too.
Well, it's way later. Okay, next hearing is a notice of intent for file 250-1037, Next Grid, Redwood LLC, 54 Plain Streets, and they have requested a continuance to the May 20th, 2019 meeting.
I so move. Second.
Julian makes a motion to continue the public hearing to the May 20th meeting, file 250-1037, seconded by Ron. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. These are things to go over.
Yes.
Our next hearing is a notice of intent for file 250-1034, Mass DOT, East Main Street, Elm Street to 195 overpass. And they've requested continuance to the May 20th, 2019 meeting.
I so move.
Second.
Julian makes a motion to continue the public hearing for file 250-1034 to the May 20th meeting, seconded by Dan Pearson. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Our next hearing is a notice of intent for file 250-1036, Next Sun Energy LLC, 210 Bay Road, continued from the April 8th meeting.
In there, here.
Hi, before we get started, there's a
Yes.
few things we wanted to resolve from the last meeting. I don't know if you got into there with, you were gonna
We're gonna attendance.
revise the performance standard evaluation. Did you do that already?
Yes, so we're very close to issuing it. I have a draft, we'll be submitting it to the commission soon.
Okay.
I have the list of questions from the last hearing, we have a response plan for all of them.
Okay.
I'm happy to run through any or all of them, or we can wait until our formal response is submitted. So for the performance standard reorganization, we've reorganized it. Most of the information is the same as what was previously submitted, but we did try to expand on topics of particular interest in the commission, like the riverfront area alternatives analysis, for example. So
No, I would say submitted.
Do it. So we can do that when it's finalized.
Yep.
Submitted. Okay. And then we needed a regulatory citation for DP superseding order regarding the uplands, bogs and land bogs. Did you find anything on that?
So we're still looking into that. We did check back on our notes because I wanted to confirm where we had heard that from DEP beyond just my telephone conversations with them. And they had reported that at a Cape Cod Cranberry Growers Association meeting in October, that upland, bogs created from uplands would not be jurisdictional resource areas. So we've included that in the letter because as of right now, that's the information that we have available
Right.
from DEP.
But we will need some kind of citation.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a topic that has made it to a superseding order or ever been appealed, I'm not sure. But certainly if we find something, we'll include it in that response. If not, we've included what we do have available.
And, also, we talked about the BVW ACEC standard.
Yes.
And you get anywhere with that? Or?
Yeah, so the BBW ACEC, our response will essentially reiterate the stance that we've presented to the commission before regarding destruction and impairment, that when viewing the cranberry bog system as a whole, the proposed work will not destroy or impair the BBW. And so in our perspective, that complies with the ACEC performance standard for no destruction or impairment of BBW and ACEC. So I would say that response, we've re-summarized and tried to cite the applicable regulation again, but it's a reiteration of our stance to date.
Okay, when do you expect to have written comments to us?
Hopefully, we're hoping to get them to you on Friday, and we're waiting for a bit more feedback from our attorney, which we expect to have tomorrow. So tomorrow or Wednesday.
We need to see what it is until we get the citation.
Correct, yeah, until we see what they were for a response.
Okay.
All right, so we have Pat Garner here, and he has a peer review that he received.
Yes.
And the commission's received, so maybe Pat could touch on
Sure.
the key points of your review. Thanks.
I'm Pat Garner. I think I'm going to basically be going over some of the questions that you were directing to Stacy. And I presume that you all have a copy of my findings. But let me sort of go over them quickly. I think the most fundamental problem that I see is that within an ACEC, in an area of critical environmental concern, you can't have any BBW laws. The guidelines simply don't give a provision to allow that unless you fall under one of a specified limited project condition. And they don't do so for dual use projects. It could be that this project is sort of ahead of the edge and they haven't caught up with the release of standards that they've done for dual use. But regardless, there's nothing in the regulations that allows this sort of use. I just heard Stacy say that there's no BBW loss and that would be their position. But the notice of intent says that there's somewhere between 570 and 600 square feet of BBW loss. And that's mostly due to the installation of stanchions and different parts of the infrastructure that they're creating through the solar project installation. So there is loss, and I think it's a fundamental problem with the notice of intent itself. Now, if there's a way to pull in written clarification from DEP, then the commission is going to be in a position to evaluate that, but at this point we have nothing. So I think that's the largest problem I have with reviewing it. But then there are other aspects as well. Let me go over them quickly. The Mass DEP issued in October of 2018 what they called Guidance on Agriculture and Solar Energy. And in that they talk about the dual use projects, and it notes, so I'm quoting, if such a project would alter a cranberry bog, an additional assessment should be made pursuant to, and it gives a regulation of 310 CMR to determine whether the project will destroy or impair any portion of the bog's ability to contribute to the present the basis of the act. There's no definition of what destroy or impair means, and there's no discussion of that item in the notice of intent itself for Lewis and Thomas. So, in my review, I've asked for a clarification of that and a justification that, in fact, the work they're doing doesn't destroy or impair the bog's ability to contribute to the BVW's significance. I've noted the same thing that the chair brought up, which is that there's an inadequate analysis, in my opinion, of performance standards. They need to be more robust, and they struck me as lacking specificity. We lack detail, and I'd like to see a much more detailed breakdown of that information. There's also, in my opinion, an inadequate alternatives analysis. I think that more detail should be provided, particularly economic, for a project of this magnitude. It's sort of gloss over, and I think much more detail is required. There's also a need to look at this particular location. Why is this location chosen and not another location? And there's not really a justification for that. I think this log must have come up and available, and now we're trying to cobble it in so that it works in this location. But in fact, the regulations require them to look around and note that there's nowhere else a similar project can be built in the area. And that, in my opinion, hasn't been done. As I walked in, you were talking about wet bogs versus dry bogs, and my comment was solely that we want to ensure that the dry bogs that were created were done so with permit, and that we're not now creating a new application on top of an unpermitted bog. That information should be readily available. I haven't seen it yet. Then there's a lot of construction-related detail that's been part of the Beals and Thomas responses to particularly Jennifer Carolina's comments in terms of how they're doing different things. And my point is that that information, everything that's construction-related, should be on the plan set itself, so that when they're given to a contractor, the contractor can open it up and know exactly what to do. For instance, there's no information on Reconstruction Bank, but there's several paragraphs of description in one of their responses on how they're going to do that. But no contractor is going to go backwards and go through all of the back and forth between the commission and the applicant. I note that, again, the notice of intent notes that in some places that there are 571 square feet of loss, and other places there are 600 square feet. That needs to be clarified. There is loss of bordering land subject to flooding, and I went through the calculations to determine whether the quantity that they determined is correct. I found that it is, but the detail that's provided on the construction plans is inadequate, and they need to add further details to allow that to actually be constructed.
Okay, so the quantity is accurate?
The quantity is accurate.
It's just the notes on the plan?
Yeah, what they show in terms of what's lost is accurate, but the detail that's provided to allow that to be built is not mentioned. It's a 1:80 scale. I don't believe a contractor could accurately reconstruct it to the standard that you would expect. I spent a lot of time looking at the hydrology. The methodology is now correct. Initially, we had some issues, and I went back and forth with Beals and Thomas on that, and they did correct those over time. The remaining issue that I have, though, is that Beals and Thomas is using the 1965 TP40 calculations, and although DEP continues to allow those, they should be using the new Atlas 14 that was issued about 2 years ago. It's poor practice to use the old data, and we now know that hydrologically, the data was basically compiled during a 30 to 40 year period of drought. So it severely underestimates the actual rainfall quantities by about 20 to 25%. So that means,
Recent projects have used NOAA collecting.
yeah, it's very unusual to see a firm using TP40, but that's an easy correction. Again, as I noted a moment ago, all of the construction-related information that's been provided in narrative should be added to the plan set, so that it's a single cohesive plan set. And that basically covers, I've got a lot more detail in here, but that basically covers the major issues and the things I think are sort of hanging. And I'd be happy to take questions.
I would say as long as the applicant knows what the comments are, understands the comments, and can address them.
There are a few that it would be beneficial, I think, we have a conversation, while Patrick is here as well with the commission. That's all right, and thank you, it was a detailed review. So I just want to clarify, because I've been misquoted a few times throughout the process. So we are certainly not contending that there is not an alteration to BBW or a loss at each point, technically speaking, of the piles. We are reviewing the no destruction or impairment, which is 10.554A, that first performance standard for BBW that talks about no destruction or impairment in the context of the DP dual use policy that was issued, looking at the cranberry bog system and the fact that that system will not be negatively impacted in its ability to protect the interests of the Act. 10.554B then goes on to speak about the commission may allow up to 5,000 square feet if you replicate yada yada yada, and that talks about loss. So we're applying under that 10.55A, and I guess that's the performance standard that we are addressing. We are, you'll see when our response is issued, planning to incorporate a 600 square foot additional cranberry bog creation area, as had been suggested at the last hearing, to offset those piles. We also took a closer look at the calculation. So as I mentioned at the last hearing, we tend to round and we tend to be a little bit conservative with our calcs. The 600 square feet, 571 rounded to 600, that was referenced, represented the maximum footprint taking the I-beam driven pile and drawing a box around it. So it includes area that is not actually metal, but that could be disturbed going into the ground. If you parse that out and actually look at just the metal footprint of that pile, it is reduced to 0.025 square feet, and your helical pile becomes the larger of the two options. And so using that footprint, which is 0.11 square feet at each pile location, you have a impact area of metal in the ground of cumulatively 380 square feet. So that's across the 50-ish acres of wetland, or 40-ish acres of wetland cranberry bog. So each individual pile is separated from the pile next to it by about 21 feet one way and 16 feet the other way. So these are very discrete points along the cranberry bog system, and that's our view, I guess, that we're taking with regard to BBW destruction or impairment. I know the guideline that was referenced, I think, by Mr. Garner is a DCS guidance document that interprets the Wetlands Protection Act regulations. It references the 10.55B performance standard. And then I know there were also some references to a section of the Wetlands Protection Act regulations in the review comment, but those pertain to coastal resource areas, not inland. And certainly we'll issue a response to comments, so the commission has this as well, but just running through the topics that were brought up. So, and then in terms of the destruction and impairment, we did try and expand on that discussion in our March 15th letter that was issued to the commission in some pretty, I think, intricate detail. And we've also included that in our reorganized performance standard discussion that the commission had requested. So that particular performance standard, if I'm remembering correctly, doesn't have that much information that's new added to the discussion, because I think it was fairly looked at in depth in the March 15th letter, but we did reorganize it for the commission as they had requested. The riverfront area alternatives analysis, we did specify a few additional that will be included in the forthcoming response. And just very briefly, we kind of went through the regulations and made sure we were looking at the correct scope of alternatives as well as the correct extent to which we needed to look at other land. So our project needs to consider the parcel itself, adjacent lots, and other land for sale in town. So we ran through and reiterated the alternatives that had been discussed, and then tried to add the other ones that had been evaluated that addressed those. So in terms of a reduced size option on the parcel, the site itself could accommodate up to a 10 megawatt DC facility. The original proposal was for 8.9 megawatts as compared to the 8.7, which it currently is proposed as. That was reduced in response to planning board feedback, and that revision resulted in reducing panels within riverfront area by about 180 panels. So it's an 8.7 megawatt project as proposed right now. And that size, because the interconnection cost is fixed regardless of the size of your project, is really the minimum that becomes economically viable for this type of project. We had talked with the commission before, and we've sussed out in narrative form the option of looking at the southerly cranberry bogs. There are some portions of those southerly flow-through bogs that are outside of riverfront area. It's not ideal to place panels there for two reasons. They're flow-through bogs, so there's no physical barrier separating the river from the panels, like the locations where we propose where there are dikes separating them. The shape of the non-riverfront area is challenging. It's a less economic layout, and it wouldn't allow us to eliminate all of the riverfront area panels just because it's a fairly limited area. But we did provide some more detail about that alternative. In terms of alternative installation types, kind of hitting the technology component of a riverfront area alternatives analysis, there's standard ground mount, which would likely not be permittable within wetland cranberry bogs. So you'd be limited to the 4 upland cranberry bogs, which would not reduce the riverfront area impact. It also wouldn't achieve the project goal of qualifying as a dual-use project, and it would prevent farming of those upland bogs because the standard ground mount is lower the ground and spaced closer together, so you wouldn't be able to get your farming equipment in. There are alternate technologies of fixed tilt. We're proposing tracking panels. The fixed tilt is less efficient, and so a worse technology in terms of minimizing impacts. The tracking panels that we're proposing allows us to minimize the footprint, be most efficient with the energy generation, so that going to the other technology would increase riverfront, at least have the same, if not more, riverfront area impacts. And then we also touched again on the helical piers and the driven piles that are proposed, as opposed to the only other technology I could think of for that particular aspect would be, concrete footings, which would be much more impactful, or sometimes you'll see the solar arrays on trays, which would also be more impactful. We provided a summary of adjacent lots, many of which are residential, either developed with single-family homes or, residentially sized lots that can accommodate the development. The applicant did look at the Fairley Lane parcel, which houses the existing solar facility, but it's not feasible to expand that facility, and also would result in greater wetlands impacts because the uplands portions of that parcel have largely been developed by the existing facility. There is the Blue View Nurseries property adjacent to the east, which could potentially house some sort of solar development. An offer was put out to that property owner and not accepted, so that property is not available to us. And then with regard to other obtainable land in Norton, given the recent rezoning, it's not feasible to construct a dual-use project within other cranberry bogs that would be present in town. Sure, so there was a recent rezoning of the January zoning.
Okay, so rezoning.
Right, yes. Which would prevent it. In terms of placing a standard ground mount in another area in Norton, this site was preferred because other portions of town don't have the interconnection availability, the capacity availability to accommodate the project. So that's, obviously there's provided here. I appreciate you letting me run through it. I'm happy to answer questions about it, but that's the riverfront area alternatives. With regard to the past permitting of the upland bogs, we're looking into that and we'll try and provide information in the response to the commission. It appears, based on what we found so far, that the work was conducted as sand mining for agricultural purposes, which would be exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act, and then cranberry bogs were created within those disturbed areas. So we can provide that information to the commission and discuss questions on moving forward on that. Construction plans, we can certainly provide more detail. Typically, our permit plan sets are not intended to be construction, but I agree there are certain aspects that have come out through the process that should be added. We talked with the commission about adding a detail about the bank stabilization, which I think you noted as well, Patrick. We can certainly change the scale of the bordering land subject to flooding so that it could be used for construction if someone doesn't actually prepare construction documents. Let's see. Oh, and then with regard to the hydrology, I would take exception. I don't think it's fair, at least from our experience doing peer reviews, we rarely see someone utilize the NOAA 14 data, mainly because our experience for our firm, and I think for the firms we review, is that we're constrained by the regulations. So the Wetlands Protection Act regulations reference the Stormwater Management Handbook, which references TR 55, which references TP 40 for the rainfall data. So we don't disagree that there's other data available, but have always proceeded in compliance with that statutory requirement.
So is that consistent with the peer review that Beals and Thomas might be for?
Yes, Beals and Thomas does not comment that applicants should be using NOAA 14 or Cornell or any other data other than what's cited in the regulations. And that's the only reason I have a sense of, and it could, I'm not saying no other engineering firms are doing it, but I don't think it's a widely accepted practice, at least with the people that we, for other projects we peer review, we're not seeing that they're deviating from those regulatory citations.
So my counter to that would be
Yeah.
that probably about 75 to 80% of the work I do is peer reviews throughout the Commonwealth. And I have not seen anybody use TP40 in 3 to 4 years. I have never seen a medium to large scale engineering firm not use either Cornell or Atlas, the recent Atlas.
Even, and in.
And it's not a regulatory constraint, that's the minimum quantity of precipitation that DEP has cited. It doesn't, the DEP clarification isn't that you can't use the more recent data, it's that they're still allowing the use
So
of
is there a
the-
clarification that's been issued by DEP?
Yeah, Loveland issued
available
it
to them?
about 2 years ago.
Okay.
It should be, you ought to be able to Google it and find it.
Yep, we can certainly look into that. I don't think it will change the outcome because we're still
I don't think it
comparing
will either.
relatively speaking, so everything changes, our existing and our proposed. So in terms of the hydrology, I don't see that as a
No, I
major
agree with you,
constraint.
I was a little startled to see what,
That's funny because we
The
had
old-
the opposite experience where and I know it came up at one of the AMWS meetings a couple years back as well, and there was kind of a resounding, we're constrained by the regulations when
yeah, I don't
we
think it's
change it.
constraint, I think it's a,
All right. Yeah, so we read there's a statement in the Stormwater Handbook that says the regulatory agency relies on TR 55 for it, so we can read that as the requirement, but we can work with Catherine if that's acceptable. Like I said, it shouldn't change the outcome, it should given that, I don't know if the commission would like the numbers rerun with the information, or
it's not heavy lifting.
yeah, no, understood. But similar to the prior revision where we had kind of undertaken an assumption based on the type, and it was made more accurate with the revisions, but the outcome is the same. All right, and then I think, did I hit on everything, Patrick, or the commission? Was there anything else that you'd like me to touch on?
I think since most of it is coming to us in written documentation for us to review. Yeah, if you don't have anything else on your list.
Oh, well, in terms of the peer review comments, no, I think I had hit on everything, and the two topics I want to discuss was ACEC and destroy and impair. I know at the last hearing you had mentioned that there would be various topics that you wanted to discuss each time, so I'm anticipating that the commission has other questions for us this evening on those other topics.
I think as soon as the first set of topics is addressed, then we're ready to move on to the others.
I mean, it would allow us to continue moving forward if we had a
three main issues are, I don't say deal breakers, but they're pretty important for
Right.
the whole project, so that really needs to be addressed and worked out.
We're stuck if you can't find a citation to document
Okay.
everything you're arguing, it's just kind of stuck there. So there's really no point in moving past that yet until you find something that you can submit that, you know, is a complete deal. And it's no past precedent, it's new technology, but something that we could use to move forward on, right?
Yeah, I think my summation of the biggest impediment at this point, a hurdle for them is getting over the ECEC requirement that no loss occur. And I think there's clearly loss occurring, even if it's over a broad area and it's a small amount of BBW. It doesn't allow for 1 square foot loss. And that's got to be addressed specifically. And I'm not sure how that's going to be done.
I think what I'm from the commission is some sort of citation to the EPA on that topic.
It's what we had asked for.
Yeah, we
Regulatory citation or a adjudicatory hearing decision that sets a precedent.
Yeah, and
That's
probably will be-
required, otherwise we fall back on the regulatory language.
I think what has happened, and we haven't talked about this, but I suspect that the dual use regulations got way ahead of the existing regulations, and they didn't cover every base. So they created this ability supposedly to put in solar panels over cranberry bog, but they didn't take into account issues like ACUCs. And
That may not have been forgotten.
It may-
That
it
may
may-
have been ACECs are
It may have been
special
purposely
areas
done.
that
sure,
They
that
never
have
modified, right?
additional performance standards
That's
for
right.
a reason.
I agree. Could be.
It
We don't
It doesn't
know.
mean it was forgotten.
Right. Yeah, just like destroy and impair are not defined. That's very difficult. It's difficult for a commission to then know what to do with it. Because destruction and impairment is taking place. But is it de minimis or is it critical? The regulations aren't helpful.
Is there anything else on that?
No, I think we'll be getting all the responses to you as soon as possible, and we'll.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Does anyone else in the commission have any questions, comments? Any questions or comments? Scott, here, Joel.
Joel Johnson, 208 Bear Road. Stacy, you had mentioned you reduced the size of the project by reducing to 180 panels, right? So that's,
So I was summarizing what happened during the planning board process where we reduced the project from, I think the original submission was 8.9 megawatts and now we're 8.7 megawatts and
but I think you
along-
said you reduced it by reducing 180 panels.
Within riverfront
22,000
area.
panels, So
I'm
that's
s-
0.008% of the project.
I was speaking specifically for the riverfront area performance standards. So talking about a reduced alternative within the riverfront area. And just summarizing where we have been
Portion
to
of
date.
that 0.2 megawatts that was removed from the riverfront area was 180 panels.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Panel size is less than 1% reduction, that's not much.
The 180.
Yeah, like 180 at 22,000. I don't
Right,
think the
and-
planning board agreed that you reduced it, that's my comment.
You said that you seek to
Address them through.
I'm sorry.
Address the question through me, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. They said that they looked for other locations. Where outside of Norton did they look for other locations? They mentioned other places in the immediate area, but are they required to look within a restricted area? Can they look anywhere? Did they look anywhere around?
again real quick?
Chuck Gallagher, 201 Bay Road.
So where did they look outside of the town?
Outside the town. Because we're right close to East Township.
So the riverfront area performance standards for alternatives analysis require us to look at alternatives within our property on adjacent lots and for this particular project within other land that is for sale within Norton. We're not required to look beyond the town boundaries.
So there's my question. Did they look in
No, the scope of alternatives for the riverfront area evaluation is specific to the size of the project. So when we get their response letter, we'll be able to check it with the regulations and make sure they look as far enough as they're supposed to. but it sounds accurate right now.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Jean Simmons, 15 Massasoit Avenue. We talked a lot about the cranberry bogs themselves and about the dual use. And once again, I want to bring up the fact of the ecosystem here in our town. And in particular, when they altered their setup and they put in bog number 18, they have now created more impact on the bog, causing more impact to our ecosystem. I've given you some information on wildlife conservation of solar energy development in a desert in California, only because there is nothing around to find any information on such a diverse area like cranberry bog. There's also information about PAC, which is Partners for Amphibian and Reptiles and Conservation. And in all of it, it talks about the fact of minimizing the disturbance of soil. It talks about the fact of not impeding movement of these animals. There's another one about mortality for birds. No one has talked about the fact that there are going to be so many solar panels that it creates a ponding effect. This is, in particular, already has a lot of birds in it. We get egrets, we get herons, there are plovers, there are sandpipers. They're attracted to these solar panels, and there's trauma that is caused to them if they are not killed directly. Trauma is caused, and then they can be attacked, eaten by predators. We don't always see them on the property because they sometimes get to fly away, and then they pass away someplace else.
So what's your question though?
It's not really, well, the question is, did we do anything about the species? Have we looked on the common
We're
species?
trying to resolve the wetland protection act, and that's
Right.
kind of where we're limited to.
You know, and the fact that there's actually information on one of these having to do with, there's light pollution, there's noise pollution, which can interfere with the hearing of certain animals.
Again, noise is a planning board issue.
Well, no, it's with animals, so it is within conservation, because some of these animals rely on their hearing to either catch their prey or stay away from it. So it affects them. It's in here, you can read about it. There's also information about electromagnetic fields, talking about how chronic exposure can damage the nervous system, disruption of circadian rhythm, heart function, impairment to immunity and fertility. And then on your website, there is actually an article. It's about the wildlife habitat evaluation of the Canoe River. And it says right in there about corridors and connections. Call of the wild biologist C. Diane Borotos conducted a wildlife habitat evaluation for the Friends of Wheaton Farm on the property along Mulberry Meadow Brook, which is in the middle of the cranberry bogs. Investigations conclude that there are significant wildlife corridors between Canoe River, Mulberry Brook, and portions of Hockomock Swamp. Maintenance of these corridors is extremely important for genetic diversity and dispersal of young and various species, including fox, coyote, deer, so on, painted turtles, snapping turtles, spotted turtles, which are protected, I believe, as well as amphibians and reptiles. So I'm just wondering, you know, if anyone has taken into consideration the impact of what they're doing, which will impede the movement of some of these species. The equipment going in can actually trap some of the species underground, which is in one of these papers. Soil compaction can occur, especially if they're doing it during hibernation time. So I guess my question is, has anyone even thought to address the ecosystem and how it will affect the rest of us? Because it's all connected. We're all connected to it. So there's some information there, and all of these state pretty much that there is not enough information out there. and it specifically talks about the fact that paradoxically, the implementation of large-scale solar energy development as an environmentally friendly alternative to conventional energy sources may actually increase environmental degradation on a local and on a regional scale with negative effects on wildlife. And we all know that if you affect the wildlife, eventually it comes back to us. So that's a concern, and I'd like to see it addressed.
Thank you.
So we'll make copies for you.
Okay.
And then, obviously, the commission will need to read all of it
Yes,
and give
absolutely.
copies to them.
Any other questions, comments? We good? Meet again in the next meeting, that's the plan?
Yes, that would be,
Okay, so the next meeting is on May 20th.
okay.
I was just gonna ask, would folks like to set up a site visit before then?
We should just be clear that the site inspection is for the Conservation Commission to gather information. It is not a public hearing, it is not part of open meeting law. There is no vote that happens during this. It is entirely up to the applicant if they allow butters to be there. It is not required. So when we're talking about a site inspection, that would be for the Conservation Commission specifically. You're not gonna miss anything because we can't have any actual discussion or back and forth or any decision-making during that site inspection. That would all still have to happen at a public hearing.
Can we ask if they would allow the abutters along?
You could ask them. I
Because I think we would like to.
don't know that, that's totally up to them if they allow it. And if they don't, then there's not anything that would
This
be.
project would affect
Yeah,
all
I
of us
think
abutters.
the complication is the applicant is not actually the owner of the property, and so the actual permission would have to come from the owner of the property.
They'll work that out with the owner for us to be on the project.
They may be fine with your coming on the property, but the owner may not be.
Well, I'm gonna tell us if they're not. Come down there, he says leave, we'll leave.
I can't speak for the owner.
So we will put together a few dates and get back to you.
Great.
So we want to continue that to the May 20th meeting?
Yes, please.
Yes, that'd be great.
And need a motion for that then, please.
I move that the hearing for, 250-1036 be continued until May 20th.
Second.
Julie makes a motion to continue the public hearing for file 250-1036 to the May 20th meeting, seconded by Lisa. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you for
time.
your time.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Our next hearing is an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, file 250-1030, East Hodges Street, and they have requested continuance to the June 10th meeting.
I so move.
Second.
Julie makes a motion to continue the public hearing for file 250-1030 to the June 10th meeting, seconded by Lisa. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. The next hearing is a notice of intent for file 250-1032, and they have requested a continuance to the June 10th, 2019 meeting.
I so move.
Julie makes a motion to continue the public hearing for file 250-1032 to the June 10th meeting, seconded by Dan Doyle. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay. And Lisa is checking out, right?
Yes.
All right. Our next hearings are notice of intent for files 250-1023 through 250-1028, Con9 Capital Partners, Glenwood Street subdivision.
You could close all of them at the same time.
Did
if
you
want
guys-
this one.
Before we close the public hearing for the first 6, do you guys have anything you want to add tonight?
Not particularly, just in general, you know, we were here last time, and went through the project in detail.
So we'll start with 250-1023, Lot 1, Leonard Street subdivision plan.
So you can close all of them together.
Oh, again?
Yeah,
Okay.
but you just close them.
So, can you do that? Close the public hearing for
Uh,
6.
Yes, I can include, are we doing 6 or 7?
6.
6.
23 to 1028.
Yep.
All right, so I move that we close hearings for file numbers 250-1023, 1024, 1025, 1026, and 1027, and 1028.
Second.
Thank you.
Closing public hearing.
Oh,
Just close the public hearing.
okay, all right.
So Julie makes a motion to close the public hearings for file 250-1023 through 250-1028, seconded by Dan Doyle. All those in favor?
All right.
All right.
So moved. All right, that part's done.
Okay, and so then you can close the public hearing for building 7 if you want, 250-1039.
All right, I will make a motion, we close the public hearing for file number 250-1039.
Second.
Julie makes a motion to close the public hearing for file 250-1039, seconded by Dan Pearson. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Okay, and you want to talk about the road?
Okay. That's,
So then we open the public hearing for 1039. It's 10. Okay.
1035, is it?
Yep.
Okay, next hearing is a notice of intent for file 250-1035, Con9 Capital Partners, Leonard Street Reconstruction, Route 123 to west of house number 54. Continued from the April 8th, 2019 meeting.
Good evening again, Mark Dibb with Con9 Engineering Group. The team is Jeff O'Neill with Con9, Don O'Neill with Con9, Brad Holmes, Professional Wetland Scientist with VCR, and Susan Bernstein with Bernstein Law, on behalf of Con9. So we did resubmit the Leonard Street widening project on April 22nd. We submitted a response to comment document. We submitted a wetland narrative and wetland replication plan. We also submitted an updated application based on some changes from comments. We submitted a revised stormwater report and submitted revised roadway widening plans. We do not have a review back from Horsley and Witten yet, but I would like to, if the board is able to, going through, I've colored up the plans and just go through the plans once, showing the different aspects and where we are with the plans, and I as well can go through the response to comments if we have some time. So so this is the project. Again, in general, the plans haven't changed a lot, but again, I've highlighted some of the components of the project. So this shows this is the intersection of 123 and Leonard Street, and I'll go into each sheet. I have detailed plans. So as you come down Leonard Street, we finally get to the green areas where we have wetlands on both sides. In some areas, we do have some upland in other areas. As well as at this point, this is a perennial stream, so we have a 200-foot riverfront. And what we're also showing is the drainage components and culverts that we're proposing to replace. So when you look at sheet 1, we're primarily not really in conservation jurisdiction, but we're proposing drainage upgrades that the roadway does not currently have. So what I'm showing, the purple or pinkish is actual widening in this area. So there's actually some decent widening, more than 4 feet, for the first portion of this project. And what this blue line is outlines the areas that we're treating to stormwater management standards. So we're using a subsurface infiltration system at this point, another one here. And we have a catch basin that goes into a drainage basin as part of the basin serving a portion of this parking as well. But it's been coordinated through the two different projects. So I'm just going to move off that sheet. And as you continue on to sheet 2, you'll see we're still widening, so we still have that pink area. This is our entrance here in between buildings 4 and 5. And this is where we start incorporating additional drainage. This is where our wetland modification that we're doing as part of the limited project. The water dependent use where we're also replacing the culverts comes to play. So as you travel down, there's a decent portion of the existing pavement. So this is where we're only widening this small portion of the pavement, but we're treating quite a bit more in these areas. So we have a bioretention area that's been designed and part of the stormwater management plan. And then at this point where we don't have a lot of room on either side of the project. So we early on in the project, we decided to widen the south side only, because I can show you that map. Just woods, the tree. It's a heavy tree line as soon as you go off the pavement on this area. This side, it's more of a open drainage, intermittent stream channel. So this is where we're widening, and this is where some wetland modification is happening. This is where it's triggering the replication plan that you see in the project. And then you get to one of the culverts that we're proposing to replace. We can go a little bit more into detail, but we've provided additional calculations supporting our design for that culvert. And then as you move to sheet 3, it continues similar. We're widening only on that side. The north side, edge of pavement, existing edge of pavement is proposed edge of pavement. So again, that purplish color is the widening. It's about 4 feet. And this highlighted area is the replication area, which we've provided a new plan on that. And these are, again, we're basically sliding that existing ditch over that you've seen on the sidewalk. And I've added some details. Right now, the pavement goes to about a 1 to 2 foot wide shoulder, and then there's an existing field stone wall which goes to the drainage ditch. What we're proposing is to, instead of that wall, we're proposing a 3-to-1 slope. So even in areas right against here where we're not capturing the runoff because we're just short on space, basically, we are providing some additional vegetative filtering to that project. We're providing, and again, it varies throughout the project, but between 1 to 2 feet of filtering now. There's no drainage on the road right now. We're going from 1 to 2 feet all the way up to probably about almost 10 feet by the time through these areas. So that particular treatment is not really documented in the stormwater management report. What is documented is the areas where we're getting into swales and bioretention areas or capturing in culverts or catch basins and more formal drainage. And all that is incorporated into the redevelopment portions that are outlined in the submittals. And the bottom line of the drainage is that we're proposing about 14,000 square feet of new pavement. We're treating to stormwater management standards fully about 18,000 square feet of new pavement. And then we're adding additional treatment of about 6,000 more. So we're about 60% more than what we're proposed on how much pavement we're able to capture and add some treatment. And we're definitely capturing and treating to stormwater standards for the amount of new pavement. We'll just go to the last page here real quick to show the last section. So sheet 4 is down at the end of the project. And in this area, we basically don't have any wetlands tight against the project on the north side. So we've purposely it's hard to see, it looks like a straight line, but it's basically the widening. You can see it tapers off here before it gets to this tight wetland area, and then the widening is on the north side. Again, only about 4 feet wide. You know, so through this area, there's no wetland disturbance. We're not even in the 25-foot no disturb buffer at that point. This is the perennial stream culvert replacement, the third culvert replacement. And then, again, there's no wetlands through this area either. So, you know, it's a more general widening project. And again, we show some areas where the drainage is able to get into bioretention areas. And so again, adding treatment where possible on the site. And if you have any questions on some specifics regarding these plans yet at this point?
So it's all new information, Mark, so that, I mean, it's kind of a recap of what you've already been doing. But
Yeah.
that
So,
Rosa Witten's review and the commission being able to take the information on them.
Okay. And
Probably not
I don't know if
that
anybody
complicated.
needs to see this, but, you know, it's just, again, this is, where we're choosing to widen is associated with these drainage areas instead of going into any trees or forested areas. And then at this point, again, it's only about 4 feet of widening, so even on the north, once we're into that tree area at the end, I don't believe any mature trees even have to come down for the work. I would just like to go through the like 16 bullet points on the peer review, just to touch base on. Does everybody have my response to comments? I do have some copies of it.
Yeah, I think copy if you have it.
Yeah, you want to just wait till mostly we're going to use it so we don't have to address all of them?
I can do that. Maybe a couple key points, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
One of the main points that kind of leads into the rest of the design was how we were meeting the Norton stormwater bylaw for, I think the Horsley and Witten comments had we needed to treat for the new pavement, and then the rest of it we had to meet the redevelopment section. There's basically 3 sections: new development, redevelopment with the MS4 permit, and then redevelopment for a roadway project less than half a lane. It's basically 10.C. I'm not familiar with the regulations, but we did, between now, the last meeting and now, we emailed Horsley and Witten, that team, and they concurred that the approach of the 10.C under the redevelopment section that allows us to treat to the maximum extent feasible. It doesn't need that 8.8 for the entire pavement area. So what it says, we don't have to, you know, there's definitely portions of this project that are being treated at this point. So we feel the direction approach for stormwater is acceptable for both the stormwater management standards and the town of Norton bylaws. And we submitted Brad Holmes' company, professional wetland scientist, submitted very detailed summaries of our wetland modifications and how we meet the standards for that. We also submitted a very detailed updated replication plan. Based on our comments, so we have that resubmitted. We did actually reduce it down to 1 plan, so we feel we've met concerns of the consultant on that. And I think the other biggest thing that we did was basically where we're filling, you know, because we have an existing, that section where the stone wall, so we're filling in some floodplain area. So what we've provided, the calcs were all already submitted, but we provided a similar diagram that we provided for buildings 1 through 5. So these are those fill areas, so we provided this document that has the fill at every elevation. So we feel we meet floodplain requirements.
Mark, it had been mentioned a couple of times about the stream crossing standards, and you tried to make a table about what the standards are and then what you're actually providing, so you can compare them. Was that it in your new packet?
We've continued to show the requirements based on the section of, we did add more calculations and add the requested information, but it's not in a table of how our submittal matches up with the standards. It's more how we meet the,
Right, so that's something you can put together, because I know I've asked for it, and I think personally
it is, but we're focusing on how we're meeting the standards for replacement culverts. And there's specific sections on what we need to do and guidelines for replacing culverts. I can kind of backtrack because in the revised submittal says we're clearly not meeting culvert replacement standards, and then we go into that we are meeting the requirements, or not culvert replacement, just culvert standards, but we are meeting the requirements within the replacement standards. But we can go back and
so we'll just note for the record that we're requesting the table again.
So these culvert requirements, they're just lots 1 through 4, right?
The 3 culverts that they're changing.
yeah, there's existing just corrugated metal culverts under Leonard Street.
Right.
But they're separate from lots 1 and 4.
Right, this is a
Yeah, they
separate
got
permit application.
I'm sorry, yeah. Okay.
2 are intermittent streams, and 1 is a perennial. ECR as well provided the riverfront information that was requested by Emerson and Witten. And then the technical stormwater, adding a detail here, I think we've gone through all those comments as well. Additional questions?
So the question, Julian, Ron, Dan, questions? Dan.
I was just curious why on sheet 4 the road widening goes to the north side, or just why it would need to go that far down Leonard Street in general, I guess.
There is one additional proposed driveway right in this area,
Okay.
which we have not submitted any plans for yet.
Okay, so tractor trailers would need to possibly go that far down.
Yes,
the road.
this is I believe this is the existing driveway to a house, and then we have another driveway that'll be incorporated into the widening at Federer.
Okay.
That's it? Any questions, comments?
I'm Susan Bernstein, I'm the counsel for Condon. We appreciate your closing the hearing on the other NOIs this evening. And it seems there's one more thing that Jennifer has requested for the road work. We would like to be able to submit that quickly so that in terms of the process, might we only have one more meeting on the roadway? A question.
Will we have one more meeting? Yeah, I don't know what the comment response is gonna be. an expedite it, you can.
We submitted most of our material a week ago, and then prior to that, I think we're now on 20 days. So we just wanted to be sure that we were in the queue for you, so that maybe we could wrap this up next time.
There are comments that have to be returned proportionally with that.
Yes.
So we can't fully anticipate, but we presume that all the issues will be dealt with. We can't say definitively right now.
If you can address the comments to their satisfaction before we even get to the meeting, then we'll have no reason to keep going.
I just wanted to, just a kind of semantic, with Horsley and Witten's contract, they are allowed for the contract 21 days to respond. They do have in their section under, it's called Elements and Assumptions, they have a bullet that says, in order to ensure a timely review process and allow adequate time for the town of Norton and the applicant to review our reports, we would request that any additional review materials, including revised submittals, be received by our office at least 21 calendar days prior to a scheduled hearing date. If the review materials are submitted within that period, H&W will commit to providing the report at least 4 days prior to said meeting to allow the applicant time to provide the response and ensure that their application will be processed in a timely manner. If review materials are submitted beyond the date, H&W will not commit to completing. We submitted a week ago, so any effort to complete prior to the last possible day would be appreciated.
So you're saying for the next meeting going forward?
Yes.
That they have 21 days?
Yeah, no, I'm not
Okay.
complaining
I thought
about
you were
tonight.
saying 7 days.
No.
Okay, I get you.
Even last meeting came at the 21st day, and
So you need more time from them.
Yeah, I mean, everyone needs more time to review stuff, and everyone's trying to get it in as fast as possible.
So I presume we need a continuation for 520. So I move the hearing for 250-1035 be continued until May 20th.
Second.
Julian makes a motion to continue the public hearing for file 250-1035 to the May 20th meeting, seconded by Ron. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you. Okay, I was not at the March 25th meeting, so. Yeah.
Are these the ones from last meeting that we said we were gonna
Yeah,
put on the, okay.
yeah, 325 and 4 minutes, or what we're.
I had these. Thank you.
Give me an extra one.
Yeah, it's good, it's what you already gave us, if you
Yep.
want me to.
Yep.
Well, I don't see what I'm concerned with these, so anybody else have any comments about the minutes of March 25th? If not, we can consider a motion to approve these minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes for March 25th Conservation Commission meeting.
Second.
Motion made by Dan Doyle, seconded by Ron. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Scott's abstaining.
I'm short, but not that short.
You weren't there.
And I am Dan Pearson is absent. So I can certainly consider a motion, I can't really comment. This is the meeting that was held to go over details.
Terms and definitions.
Of terms and definitions.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of April 4th, 2019 as submitted.
Motion made by Ron, seconded by Dan Doyle to accept the minutes of April 4th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries.
And then we just have Julian and Pearson abstaining.
Exactly.
4-8, Melissa did draft the minutes, but I didn't have a chance to look them over first, so they were not in your packet. They'll be ready for next time.
Okay.
Do you want to think of a date for
Yes.
a Beirut inspection?
Yes.
So we will
We're in May. That's fine.
yeah, we're in May.
All right.
Now, if you want me there, I can only be there on a Friday or the 18th. If you want Pat Gardner there, we need to get an estimate from him and receive the funds and make sure he's available as well as the commissioner's consultant.
Friday's a little tough for me.
Yeah, Friday's gonna be tough for everybody.
Friday the 3rd, Friday the 31st.
When are they? Yeah, they're 5:20.
And the 18th is Saturday. Right, that won't work.
Well, I mean, you could do it Sunday if you want. And I've only got the 19th, so
Sunday's
I'm not
always
helpful to you.
This is everyone's salary
I'm busy, busy.
record for FY '19. Okay? On the back of that, it's comparable.
Yeah, maybe we can go for me.
And notes about years of experience, right? Find them, and if not provided, because they can get it. If you want more.
I could do any Friday, I think.
Friday, get that for you. But you'll see that in every single one, almost every single one of our cases, in FY '19 salary for.
What time are you thinking though?
We make less than.
Well, I mean, I'm here from 8:30 to 12:30, but it's really, it's your inspection, so it's when the most of you can go and what time is best for you. If you decide if you go without me, that's not.
Do we have to go? It's just one, right? I can't, I'm just not sure how much an inspection is actually going to answer. What are the points? You just want to find the.
Yeah, right, a lot of it's gonna be,
I mean, it has been kind of hashed out.
I don't know what to say, but.
I do site inspections to visualize what they're gonna do and what it looks like right now and think about how they're gonna construct things. Picture it in my head, and that's how I write the conditions of permit. So you may wanna do that kind of.
The plans show a lot of it.
They do, and it can be broken down a little bit. Kind of break down into sizable chunks when you're out there and look at the plan and look at one section. I mean, you're not deciding anything there, you're just sort of looking at it.
Right.
It's a fact-finding inspection, it's not, there's not real discussion. You can ask questions, but you're not gonna discuss it as a commission. You take pictures, you can ask them to stake things if you want, or show you the cranberry equipment. If there are solar panels up there, how are they going to continue farming cranberries, right? So you want to ask things about irrigation, and then how are they going to harvest, and what does the equipment look like? Is it really going to fit under the stormwater panels?
So when
said we were gonna hold 3 days for them. I mean, a lot of stuff in that. Just days that we know that people can go or can't go.
Obviously, this year.
Throw it out there and see what's others. I don't think we can decide right now.
Right, all, so
I think
three
we're
of
out
the
there.
financial analysts.
So, they harvest by flooding.
Yes, because sometimes they use helicopters.
Sometimes it's right there.
Dry houses can also.
Yeah, they have little things that roll and
Beat
go
them
up
up
the line. Yeah.
Yes, in some, in one case,
Yeah.
about $6,000.
I don't know.
But it's the financial.
Logistically nuts.
I suspect that all these are wet, obviously.
Yeah, I think flood them all, I think, because that's that far. I mean,
And the equipment, well, I mean, the wet harvest, and then they also feed
That's
the
why you
plants
see increase in my end.
under the water.
Yeah.
And then they float to the top and
And they collect them all. We, I
Well,
don't know if we need to pack our own get with us. Do you think we need them?
If you want to know about soils in the bogs and the plants, to confirm whether they are BDW definitions.
But we're only
It's all right?
If you want to document it in records, then
6 years ago, when I got educated, $60,000, okay, $200,000 general fund, which I'm sure comes back to me some way, not all of it, but it's done.
Well, you have to pick a date, but
Yeah.
the way my schedule looks, that's gonna be tough for me.
All right, when are you available, Ron?
The collection just came up at the,
I'm available most days.
What about you, Dan?
It would be Saturday, any weekend, or we can do it, I suppose, like early afternoon, or
Do you have Friday afternoon?
I can do it at like anytime after 3, yeah.
All right. What are you doing?
Any day you like,
and then the low.
literally.
I
Right,
can,
it
Any
could be
day
a
you like.
Thursday as well, I'm here till 7:30, so
yeah, that'll be better.
if Thursday helps.
Why don't we do it Thursday at like 4?
Yeah, I can
Want to
do
do
that.
that?
That works for
What
everybody.
Thursday works for you, Jen?
I'm sorry, which week?
We don't know yet, we just got the day.
Okay. It's actually, I do want to say that it would be better if it were after next week.
Okay, so we're looking at May 9th, first day available.
Yes, that would.
Yeah, even, I would say the 13th would be.
It's not a Thursday.
Oh, right. So the,
May 16th.
the
Moving on.
16th.
May 16th, can you do
Oh,
that?
I don't care.
It's
I'll do it, I
16th,
can
you
do it
wanna
on the
do it
night.
before the
I can do it on
I
the
say we do
night.
the
I
16th
can
then.
do the 16th.
16th, everyone?
Sounds good.
All right,
16th,
good.
let's propose that to the faculty.
Was the time? Correct.
4.
31 people left.
You can show up later and just call us when you get there.
I'm not working that day, I'm working the day before, so that will work.
Perfect. All right, what's the plan?
All right, so site visit
See you
is
at the
5/16,
Yeah.
4 PM.
We had other positions.
And you'll tell us where we're gonna meet up.
Right.
Yes.
Interview this evening. Good.
Well, I'm sure if you tell them May 16th, they're all gonna be there.
Well, if I want the applicant.
That's what it,
Oh, yeah?
they're not gonna miss the opportunity to show you.
Okay.
This thing. Okay,
Now we go to.
so that's everything. Now we go back
Do
to
our hearings.
Condyne for the permit.
Yes. Any other conditions?
I did get some comments from Horsley Witten on the draft permit.
Okay.
Not terribly substantive, though, so it was helpful, but not a significant difference from what we had seen. Other than we're gonna add this table that includes all the permits and all the resource areas and all of that in the permit itself.
So we're certainly not gonna do this as a bulk order, bulk.
No, you gotta do them individually. Yeah. So,
Start at the beginning.
lot one?
Lot one.
Do you have a copy of the conditions?
I can give you the track sheet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean, all of, I mean, the bulk of these are all the same except for very select
Correct,
conditions.
correct.
For example, 14 varies. but it's generally, I mean, that's basically the only one that truly is specific to the customized activities of the lots. It sounds like. And there are a couple of others.
Yeah. For the vast majority, they are virtually the same, except for the minor parts where you need to call out lot 2, it goes across lot 3, it goes across lot 4, and then convoluted drainage system. Or lot 4 has a retaining wall that nobody else has, so there's something specific on the retaining wall. The bulk of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 are virtually the same. 3 has some alteration in riverfront area that the others don't.
The only, I mean, you have attachment A, that is to be submitted or by the applicant, or?
I have all the attachments ready.
Okay, and so, operation and maintenance plan, attachment A, I mean, that's how the operation and maintenance plan is to be constructed. It's to be.
Operation and maintenance plan is after they finish construction, how are they gonna keep it clean and maintained?
Right, but I assume attachment A is instructions on how to put together a complete operation.
Yeah, it's the way we've done it before is we take what they give us, yes, it's been reviewed, it's appropriate, we just make it an attachment so they don't lose it.
And then 60 irrigation question mark, has that been revised as?
Nope, you guys haven't answered that yet. So they're requesting an irrigation well. We asked for not to use water to irrigate grass. So you just need to decide if you're approving an irrigation well in the aquifer to water grass. Or like Red Mill Village was supposed to be zero escape with, I mean, they had some irrigation wells, but the grass itself was supposed to be a drought resistant type, so you wouldn't need that much water. That's all, it's just a question mark, I don't know what you guys want.
So it was the proposed irrigation well, one well for the entire well, or small wells?
I don't know off the top of my head, I think it was one lot. I'd have to confirm that.
Is there any regulatory prohibition with regard to irrigation wells? Is that really our jurisdiction? To say they can't do an irrigation well? We can suggest it.
I think it was on, I thought it was on Red Mill Village, and that's why they're using the detention basin to pump water and irrigate. It's been done before.
But if it's water in the detention basin, they shouldn't have to irrigate.
I don't think you need to irrigate at all, but that's my personal opinion.
Well, I don't know if is this enforceable? Does the Wetland Protection Act say you're not allowed to install an irrigation well?
Only if it has an impact on a wetland. I mean, you can strike it if you want, it's just one of the,
well, I just
the larger
don't know
projects.
our,
That's the question.
I don't know our authority.
We can suggest that.
That's all.
Just said, well, we have to go in.
Okay,
I just don't know, I mean, I don't recall.
it's okay, you want to strike it, that's.
Yeah, but you see, in Red Mill Village, it's bordering on one of our town wells. There's not a town well over there?
No, it's the same aquifer.
Oh, okay, but the water's going that way.
I kind of feel like I'm paying if I
From our well.
if I don't.
Next two wells downstream.
What do you think, Gene? Yeah, they.
Like Jennifer said, I
Dan?
cut down on irrigation as best as
That's
possible.
fine. You're right to read.
So that's why we asked them about rainwater
We asked them,
harvesting.
suggested it.
I just
And they said
don't
no.
know, I didn't realize this was part of the Wetlands Protection Act. Yes, I guess it's public and private water supplies, but
Tell them put stone down, that way you don't have to cut stone.
We recommend no lawn.
It's up to you, it's up to you. It's in there as with a question mark, because I don't know if you want it or not, so if you want to strike it, we strike it, you want to keep it, we keep it.
You want to keep it? Just decide, it's fine.
I'm gonna say, I don't think it's gonna have any impact on the aquifer.
So, strike it.
Strike it.
Ron, strike it or keep it?
I recommend we strike it.
All right.
Strike it.
All right, thank you. Strike
Okay.
it. Moving on.
All right,
And the only other comment is 61 and 62 appear to be pretty much the same.
the numbers have changed a little bit, so,
But I mean, if we read the text, it's, you know, existing vegetation should stay undisturbed.
yep.
25-foot no disturbance zone, and this is.
62 on here.
Oh,
Change it to the,
when
just
did
this one.
that?
When the updated one.
Today.
I
No, nobody got it.
I-
He just happens to
I
have
have
it.
it.
He
I have
asked
it
me for a
CC'd.
copy of
I have
it.
it CC'd.
Then that question is,
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
and then attachment B is a,
That's the
It's
only.
their grassland management plan that they proposed.
and then the last one, 70.
Yeah, I have to put the numbers in.
70 is now lighting.
I have to go through and check the numbers.
Okay, so it's, 70 is like, so 71 would be all of the infrastructure.
The perpetual conditions are the last one. And then I always check that right before we issue it because the numbers change.
I'm ready to make a motion on that, unless people have other questions. I move we approve the draft order of conditions for file number 250-10.
Second.
Julie makes the motion to approve the draft order conditions for file 250-1023, seconded by Ron. All those in favor? Aye. So, this one's out like so much, no, just so I can say, all those opposed. Ask anyways, you know. All right. So this is not one. So I apologize. I just got the packet you gave me on Thursday, I didn't get the rest of it. I didn't.
They were, the drafts were
Emailed,
emailed
right?
before I
know.
went on
I
vacation,
know. I
so.
apologize. All right. We have order conditions from 250-1024, lot 2. Comments, questions?
Well, once again, everything up until 14 is the same. Even 14, it just says lot 2 instead of lot 1. And there's otherwise nothing different.
No, shouldn't be anything really different.
And
Take out the well.
and the well will be drying up. And so there's not much new to discuss, and I'm going to venture to move that file number 250, the orders and conditions drafted for file number 250-1024 be approved.
Julie makes a motion to approve the order of conditions for file 250-1024, seconded by Ron. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? And passes. All right.
Lot 3 is, I think, very much a ditto, except I didn't see, and again, in 14, which is a specific one, I have XXX square feet
Yes.
of non-degraded, and the XXX stands for,
I think I just got the information from Mark given an email this afternoon.
so that would be,
Yes, I guess I know.
It'll be
it's
added.
some
At least I remember.
and then again, the irrigation well is gone, and then my 61 says approximately 2144 square feet of riverfront shall be cleaned of all trash.
Yes, that's in their permit, that's in their application. That's their cleaning up of degraded riverfront area.
And then I guess these are part of the in perpetuity.
Yes, the last one.
The last four on this, because this is the first time they appear.
Maybe that's where,
Yeah, the in perpetuity always has to be changed at the last minute.
maybe that's where
We changed it.
stabilization.
Yes, so the only thing different is that there's work in the riverfront area on lot 3 itself. And that there's degraded riverfront area and restoration of riverfront area.
Anybody else want to? I move the draft order of conditions for file 250-1025, lot 3, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Julian makes a motion to approve the draft order of conditions for file 250-1025, seconded by Ron. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved.
About 4. 4, I think, is a deal.
Or, yes, it's basically the same, there's some work in
There-
riverfront
There
and
is
a
a
new
retaining wall detail. And then I have 45 and 46 specific to the retaining wall.
45. This is 46 retaining wall.
Slightly different.
Yep. Yep.
And then 60 disappears. And then we have perpetuity.
Just 32.
They're not filled in, but these last ones
They're going to transfer over to.
are, yeah, I think that, so that's the detail that has to be entered?
Yes.
That's right.
The in perpetuity.
Sure. Great.
And if there are any comments, I move the draft order of conditions for file number 250-1026 be approved as drafted.
Second.
Julian makes a motion to approve the order of conditions as drafted for file 250-1026, seconded by Ron. All those in favor?
Aye.
One of the things that I would offer.
This is what gets interesting.
On Saturday,
Yes.
Lot 5.
everyone, every department that we have as pertains to our budget.
Did I
Who would
start?
like to start?
Well, I mean, I'm going to speak at one point, so I might as well start.
Sure.
So what is different here in item 2, item 2 is different. That's because it's proposed to be
Right.
okay. So we have the filling of the LSF for the warehouse building and the filling of the new building.
Yep, repavement, and then all of the stormwater from lots 1, 2, 3, 4 go to the infiltration basin at the back of the building for lot 5. And floodplain compensation will be done in the floodplain on lot 5. Some work in the riverfront area.
So I guess so you determined that there are certain parts of this law that are not consistent with the wetlands protection. And I guess I just need to have it clarified. Specific. What your objection is, or the commission.
Yes. my recommendation was that we should not be approving brand-new buildings or parking lots in the floodplain. I didn't have an issue with the stormwater management or the floodplain compensation for stormwater management in floodplain as much, but to build a brand-new building in the floodplain, I think is irresponsible.
But,
That was my opinion.
but the Wetland Protection Act does allow that with compensation.
It allows it, but I think it can be avoided.
Well, my objection, that I think I expressed to you by a single email, is that we've been through an extensive public hearing process in which these issues have been discussed, and even our consultant says this should be a denial or not. Because it was my impression that the consultant didn't raise this as a deal breaker.
It's always minimized limiting.
Well,
And they did minimize, they have a
except-
200,000 square foot building that
But
they
the
want.
law doesn't say development can't occur. And it doesn't say that we can't impact the floodplain. We can as long as we compensate. So my argument is, we have a law that says this activity in fact is allowed. So if we deny this, all it means is there's going to be a superseding order, and because there seems to be no legal basis to defend this. That's why I say
The whole
that
Wetland
that's...
Protection Act would defend that.
What was the original
Except
scope?
the Wetland Protection Act.
It can be avoided, that's where.
But everything can be avoided by doing no development, and that's, I don't think what the intention of the Wetland Protection Act is. The intention is to regulate the development, which the applicant has come forth with a very carefully argued design.
The applicant's come forward with the absolute biggest building you could possibly put
Agreed,
on a piece
agreed.
of property
That's
without
my-
even having anybody
I-
to purchase it.
But you see, this is still within the legal rights of the applicant. So just because the applicant is maximizing what they can do with their particular agenda doesn't mean we have the right to say no. I mean, we can say no. It's just, are we going to be backed up?
They got a deal probably, yeah.
And
Well, Steve, you gotta say.
then, well,
We won't know until we see what
DEP,
DEP
Well, what do you,
says.
let's see what, yeah, what do you think?
well,
Deny.
okay, I personally, from my sense of my role as citizen of the town, citizen of the state, etc., that has been asked to use my best judgment of, is an activity consistent with the law or not? Yes, it's consistent with the law. I may not want to see that project there, but if I say I deny it, to me, it's kind of an arbitrary decision, not consistent.
It's not black and white, right?
Not, but it's not consistent
Well, it's
with
not
my sense of
arbitrary.
responsibility.
You have a wide open site where you're just
Right.
putting pictures on a plan. I want to have giant buildings everywhere. They have the ability to design that project in a way that can avoid wetland alteration in the floodplain. They have that ability, you have the ability to say, no, you can avoid this.
All right,
You have
but the
that
town-
regulatory authority.
The town had the opportunity to prevent this entire project by purchasing the land, as the first right of refusal, but the town didn't want to accept that financial responsibility to keep that open space. So, now that the town has made that choice, I feel that we can't tell the applicant, no, even though the law.
They whatever they want. You have to bring them down a little bit.
Well, except my ability to say no is dependent on the restrictions provided by the Wetland Protection Act. And you say yes, you could avoid it, but that, I don't think that argument's gonna hold. So I finished my piece, and I cannot vote for it and I can't sign it.
Dan Doyle, what's your opinion?
I say deny.
Say deny. Ron?
Deny.
All right.
Gene?
Deny.
So I vote deny as well.
Okay, so it's a 5-0 deny.
5
And thank you, Julian, and we do appreciate your.
Yes.
your
No, it's-
comments. You don't
I
always
respect your
have to,
opinion.
everybody doesn't always have to agree.
I'm actually
I'll let us sing.
not a 0, I don't want.
Yeah,
We know the kind of opinion.
I'm sorry. It's okay.
See, we know your opinion. 5-0. Just sit there and be quiet, please. I've been told that.
That was not intentional.
I know, I'm just pulling your chain, come on.
So
Okay.
we need a motion then, right?
Yes, please.
Ron?
I'll make a motion to deny DEP file number 250-1027.
Second.
Ron makes a motion to issue a denial for the draft order conditions for file DEP 250-1027, seconded by Dan Pearson. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
I will touch the paper.
Lot 6. Now we're all in agreement again. Happy days.
So, I don't know if it makes you feel better, Julian, but they were written so that they could still build the stormwater
You want to sign it?
and the flood,
See what sign?
the flood
She
compensation.
distracted me. I understand. I understand.
So that they could continue with a portion of it while they, if they did their appeal or if they redesigned it.
I just think it's a
Yes.
Don Quixote thing that you guys do, that's all.
Tilted on windmills? I agree. All right, lot 6, comments, questions?
Well,
Lot
this
6 is the lot that's entire, there's no construction building. It is entirely removing soil for floodplain compensation. It's some work in the riverfront area. It's restoring degraded area, making the parking lot, making the public walkway.
all right. We're not gonna argue about the So I move that the draft order conditions for file number 250-1028 be approved as submitted.
Second.
Julian makes a motion to approve the draft order conditions for file 250-1028, seconded by Ron. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right, lot 7.
Lot 7
You want
was
the gas
difficult for
line
me,
for-
and
I
I'll just,
disagree with you. I disagree with the denial as well.
no, so I'll explain it. I had requested guidance from the commission. I heard from 4 people. 2 said their guidance was to approve the project. 2 said their guidance was to deny the project. When it's a split vote, it's a denial, so that's what I drafted. If you, now that you're all here and you have a discussion, then I write the permit for whatever you're deciding, but given the guidance I got, that was the only draft I could give you,
Who
so
didn't vote? Oh, no, we don't vote, sorry.
it's not a vote.
No vote.
Who gave,
No vote.
who didn't provide guidance?
I needed guidance to draft
Alright,
something.
so-
And what'd you say today?
For lot 7,
Yes. I know, it's a lot to remember.
It's a lot to
Go back
remember. So lot
12 months.
7 is on the north side, next to the river and the vernal pool.
so it's like one single.
Correct, the one single building where it's maxed out, thank you, it is,
And what was the issue, how close it was coming to the,
there's activity in the floodplain for a portion of the road. The stormwater basin is in the riverfront area, and there was a portion of it. Discussion about avoiding those areas and minimizing as much as possible, so.
And if I can just comment on that, because you have two, I think two detention areas on that lot. You have the driveway, there's a detention area on one side of it, and then the one that extends partially into the river.
Correct.
Is on the other
Either
side.
side of the building.
Right, well, on either side of the driveway, because by the time you get to the building.
Building, driveway.
So, the issue was, that area, in my mind, that area is not existing trees currently. And true,
I was like, you didn't want it.
true that there is an area outside of the riverfront zone, where you could put the detention basin. It requires the removal of a large portion of trees, which first can be a buffer to neighbors. And second, it's a matter of opinion as to whether destroying that ecosystem has an advantage over preserving an area that is already cleared. And,
it's modified land, so that's it too.
Yeah, and a statement is made about that the work within the riverfront is more important than that outside the riverfront, even though it's already cleared. And I just can't either emotionally or psychologically agree with this. So I have fears if this is done, that it will in fact create a result that is worse than what I feel should be. There's another note I made here. The Commission requested in writing that the applicant reduce the size of the building and the impervious lot. Did we actually request it during the hearing by saying this is not going to be approved unless you reduce the size of the building? Because I don't recall that myself. And
You request them to avoid alteration. Is what you've done.
well, but it goes back to my prior analysis that the law doesn't prohibit activities; it regulates the activity, and I just don't think it's going to hold up an appeal if we issue a denial. And I think my job as a participant is to work through the problems, not create more problems. And I think this has the potential to create more problems.
Julian, if I may ask, you said that you think not only that it would be denied, but it might make things worse. And I guess I'm missing.
That if we deny it in the appeal process,
right.
They can come back with whatever they want.
They will say, well, this still is consistent with the law, and if that's what the applicant, and furthermore, even if the next level of review denies it, the applicant can still go to court and say, look, where does this deviate from the law? And lose. Now, it's true, you slow down the applicant, but is that really what we're supposed to be doing, is being an obstructionist committee, as opposed to regulating?
I don't know if that's what anybody's doing. I think they're looking, the guidance that I received was that, yes, there are alternatives, and that impact to floodplain can be avoided. So, that's what I dropped.
So did you four agree that we should deny? I
I'm
I'm
going to say, I think this lot should be approved.
Deny? Dan?
Deny.
It's a tie.
Is it?
Approved?
Yeah,
So it's a tie. Tie goes to deny though.
A tie is a denial,
So.
if you want to continue your discussion.
Well, but here again, if part of the denial is we're going to recommend that trees be removed and that a hole be dug where they are to preserve that riverfront line, even though part of that riverfront line is now hayfield.
Well, that's the stormwater area. there's alteration in the riverfront area for stormwater, which I think most of you are okay with. The portion that's the road through the floodplain that could be avoided.
In lot 7?
Yes.
That's a hayfield.
Where, do you have a plan there? I was not aware there was floodplain on lot 7.
Yeah.
And that would be a double planning project. The tuition, all the constitution, chapter 7, decided they consider the resident.
So the floodplain line comes up to 74, was it?
And the educational visa for the year. They live with a family. That family is compensated.
You might have got
Those are 73.5, it says here. It's the flood, FEMA flood.
Yep. So here, this is Leonard Street.
Yep.
This is the, here, where is he?
73 foot.
This is the floodplain,
I see.
right? So, actually it puts the building,
Okay.
and the road itself. This is grading, so the road itself, it's like this little spot right here, right?
And
That if the building had been reduced or to get the road around it, then they wouldn't have to be in the flood.
So their compensation for this is down on lot 5.
Compensation is up here. Yeah, up here. Right, so it has to be above the 73, and they have to go incrementally, so each foot elevation that they're filling here, then they have to go to a spot that isn't floodplain, dig it out to the same square feet per elevation. Okay, so that's in the back.
Can they compensate? Compensation for that original equipment, right?
Correct.
All right, so here's the problem.
Yeah.
Here's a problem. If 3 of us are oriented toward approval, and 3 of us are oriented toward denial, and you're saying a tie goes to denial, then you have only 3 signatures on the denial, unless somebody who votes for denial wants it.
Well, you can vote, no, so you can vote to deny it, but still sign it, because you're saying that the permit reflects the vote taken, so it's not necessarily your vote. So I understand why people don't, legally, we've asked that.
Well, I'd sign it.
So I understand why people don't sign the denial if they're not agreeing with that, but
It's just a victory spear.
procedurally,
So-
you can sign it.
Is there any chance you still haven't changed? You feel the same way?
Yep.
You feel the same way?
unless you can restate things in you have to say things in the simplest way for me.
They replaced the floodplain at the right elevations.
Yeah, I mean.
It's in a hayfield.
You see, this is the problem.
What are we doing here?
They are allowed to do this. They are allowed to fill one portion of the floodplain and compensate in the hydraulically
And they have it
connected
at the right
area.
elevations and they.
Well, the semantics, but they're not just allowed to do it, the
Well, they-
commission may
We
allow.
allow that to do it. If they incrementally place the floodplain at the right elevation.
It's not a given, it's like
If it's
the
not-
commission may allow it.
Right.
If it's not
Right.
us, it'll be the.
And yeah, they came in with a giant project and did knock it down a little bit. And they waived at some of the stuff we said, but in this case, well, I don't know. You feel the same way you did, so?
Yes, I'm not going to change my vote.
All right, we're the high as the deny. All right. Sorry, Julian.
Well, I think we need to record those for better clarity.
All right.
Sure.
To take the vote? Okay.
Yep.
Dan, do you vote?
Deny.
Deny. Deny. Dan Doyle, approve. Ron.
Deny.
Julian, approve. Scott, approve. So I need a motion from somebody besides Julian.
Yeah, so those were the, yeah.
Well,
Well, I already
I'll
made
make a
half a
motion to
motion.
deny file number 250-1039.
Second.
All right, Ron makes a motion to deny the order of conditions for file 250-1039, seconded by Dan Pearson. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Okay, so it's 3-3.
Yeah, I know, it's 3-3.
I'm just pointing out I added correctly
This is
that
not
time.
democracy.
No, it is democracy, that, you know, in other countries, they don't do it this way. Most
Ties lose in democracy?
No, we.
So I can put the vote in, either in the summary, so that the vote is recorded with the, as a roll call,
Yeah.
if you want that.
Well,
Well, just to show that.
I think it has to be clarified to,
what
I mean,
This body voted.
the applicant does have the right to know what the objections were. Because obviously at the next level of review, they're going to be addressing those.
So this will be, Jen, in your,
The issue is, this commission as a body chose to not allow them to take that floodplain incursion that they built their building in and impacted, and give them the chance to replicate. That's the decision that was
No,
made.
I
in this commission.
understand.
So that's what they're gonna challenge the
I
DEP
just-
with, and it's
I just
our
don't
decision,
think
so.
that DEP will have the same level of sensitivity to these issues.
But if it's up to the
They
Conservation
might, but
Commission.
your decision is your decision. You can't make your decision based on what you think somebody else is gonna decide later on. So you're making the best decision that you can with the
Yes, you
information you have.
If the regs say the Concom decides if they allow them floodplain replication, then isn't that in there with the Concom's assessor powers? DEP can just ignore that decision and feel it's, I mean, if the regs say that we can decide, then.
Well, it's like any other appeal. The review starts all over again. It's a
Oh, I
fresh
see.
review.
Where the
They-
floodplain is, all
Correct.
the elevation funds,
And,
okay.
I mean, they'll narrow it down to what really is the issue, and then
Right.
you sort of
Okay.
put your discussion that way.
Well, I'm glad we discussed this.
Yes.
All right, so moving on. New old business?
Really lost my.
Did I miss one?
No, there's nothing, no other
Okay.
business to discuss.
All right, new business, Founder's Day.
Is that actually take care of it? What's that? Yes.
Do you want to say something?
Well, I just, so we did that. So what is this resource area delineation? Whose was that? Signing.
What letter are you on?
Well, that's just, order
Or
conditions.
is
This
this-
is not, it doesn't apply in this case, yeah, it's order conditions.
Oh,
All right. So
Nope, no COCs to sign today.
nope.
New draft minutes already, no old business. Site inspection, we agreed was on 5/16 at 4 o'clock, assuming the applicant agrees, so we'll wait to hear back. Violations,
Yeah, those were on hold until spring. I think everybody was cooperative except for 68 Dean. I called them a few times. You can't leave a message because the voicemail is full. I sent 2 letters. Then I sent the actual NOI application and it wasn't received. So, I mean, I called and said, "Well, just do a site inspection and we can take care of the trees that were removed." And there's a lot of resistance to doing things the easy way, so you may need to do an enforcement order.
okay.
You don't need to decide that right now. I need to, since it's spring, I need to send all of these people a letter reminding them, hey, it's spring, you said you were gonna start
With a
taking care
deadline.
of these violations in spring, so here's your reminder. You know, get in touch with me in a month with your progress, which is what usually happens. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? All right, so our next meeting is on May 20th.
Yes.
Our inspection is May 16th.
Right.
LS standing motion.
Make a motion to adjourn?
second.
Ron makes the motion to adjourn, seconded by Dan Pearson. All those in favor?
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.